Welcome to this week's episode of Vetiver Vibes. I had the amazing pleasure of interviewing Bonita Barth from the Aromatherapist in this week's episode. We were able to talk about organic perfumery, what it is, the benefits of it, some tips and tricks if you are looking to create your own blend, and just, a reminder to have fun. So if you're looking to create your own perfume, if you're looking to have someone create a specific blend for you or anything like that, you're going to want to tune in to this episode. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Vetiver Vibes podcast. We're your hosts, Nikki Fraser and Rachel Dean, certified clinical aromatherapists. We are excited to have you here on today's episode where you know that you'll get the best essential oil scoop.
This episode is brought to you by Essentria, a leading online school for aromatherapy. If you want to learn more about how to become a clinical aromatherapist, check out the courses at www.schoolofessentia.com. Hi, welcome to this week's episode of Vetiver Vibes. I am very excited to be here with Bonita. Bonita began her studies as an herbalist and aromatherapist in the early 70s. She's been working in the field of natural skincare, organic perfumery, and plant medicine for over 30 years. Today, Bonita formulates skincare products for spas and businesses across North America. She is the owner of the Aromatherapist located in Guelph, Ontario. Welcome to the podcast. And in today's episode, we are going to be talking about organic perfumery. But before we jump into that, we always like to ask all of our guests, what is your favorite oil?
Oh my. I really have too many favorites and they change up with the seasons. Absolutely. That's a really difficult question. Maybe my favorite oil at the moment might be cistus.
I've been hearing a lot of people talking about cistus lately.
Yeah.
So interesting that comes up again.
Yeah.
Awesome. And is there a certain reason why?
I love cistus. I mean, cistus is one of those oils that just gets richer and richer. I love the history of cistus. It's an oil from Cyprus. It sticks to the outside of the stems and the beautiful flowers of the cistus plant. And when it was originally spoken about, when it was originally kind of discovered and the Chypre scents from Cyprus were developed, they would comb it out of the hair of goats. And that's how they would comb this cistus resin out of the hair of goats. But I think the reason why I am currently so in love with cistus is a couple of summers ago, I visited my brother on Gabriola Island, and he has a beautiful, huge garden and a lot of cistus plants that he's brought from Japan, actually. And it's a microclimate that grows beautiful cistus plants. And I was working in his garden, and the sweater that I was wearing got this aroma on it. And recently, this spring, I pulled it out and put it on, this particular sweater, and fell in love with the smell of cistus.
Oh, that's such a great story. I love that. And I love that, I'm sure that sweater just brought back so many memories, which is so great.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
Great. I know. I always find we start with the hardest question at the very beginning.
Yeah, well, that's hard. That's a tough question for me because I love all of them.
Absolutely. So I'd love to know, how did you get into aromatherapy? Because you've been in it for such a long time. I'd love to know kind of a little bit how you started.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I started working in the field of plant medicine in the 70s. To be honest with you, it was a little later in the 70s. I'm old, but I'm not quite early 70s grown up old. I was in my early 20s, and it was the late 70s. And I began as an herbalist. And when I was doing my course, at the end of the course, myself and another woman did a thesis project on aromatherapy. And at that particular time, late 70s, there was no information. I mean, it was all old information. So Cleopatra and really, really ancient history. But I just fell in love with it. I just fell in love with the whole subject. I was able to purchase at that time a few essential oils, which I did. And I started working with them and I loved them. I still continued on with herbal studies. At that time, there wasn't a lot going on with aromatherapy, but I always had a passion for it.
Awesome. I love that. And I know you work with your daughter. It's become a family business. I'd love to know, how did that come to be? Was it a kind of always something you had?
It was organic. It was very organic. So Tatiana, when I started the business, Tatiana was 3 years old. And she just kind of absorbed it. I was working out of my house. And, it was all around. I used my garden and the essential oils were there, and the business was, she was just immersed, and it was very natural. And then their childhood, of course, was very much influenced by essential oils in terms of what I would do if they were sick. And then when she was a teenager, like lots of teenagers, she worked for her mom a little bit after school, packing up boxes and that kind of thing. And she studied, actually, she went to university and studied global studies, went away and traveled for quite a few years, brought back an Australian husband. And she was really engaged in the business, I think, partly obviously from the point of view of essential oils, but also just the kind of global ethnobotanical picture really engaged her. And it worked really well with her studies. She had, she could bring a lot to the table as well. And so we began working together.
Oh, I love that. And I love how you said, it just organically came to be. And that's one thing I hope for my children, of being submersed in the aromatherapy world from babies, that once adults, they'll appreciate it a lot more.
Yeah.
So I hope I have a similar.
Yeah. It's all those olfactory memories, right?
Right.
They lay down beautiful tracks in the mind.
Yeah. Hopefully that's what I'm hoping. So I would love to talk to you about organic perfumery.
My favorite topic.
Awesome. Can you share with our listeners what is exactly organic perfumery for someone who maybe not quite understand it?
Yeah, so organic perfumery perfumery was originally only organic. That's the beginning of perfume back in the 16th century and even earlier, much earlier, was entirely based on natural materials. And that's why natural materials like, your rose and your jasmine, your frankincense had they have such a high price. They were so valued. Lots of people say that Europe was invented through the trade of essential oils, spices, so basically it was originally only that. Around the late 1800s, around 1890, sort of with the chemical evolution, so to speak, when petrochemicals started to be used in different industries, they discovered actually wintergreen was the first aroma to be replicated by a synthetic. It's 97% one ingredient, salicylic acid. So it was an easy thing to duplicate. By around 1920, it was completely taken over by synthetics. So the perfume industry was completely taken over by synthetic perfumes. It was just so much cheaper, so much easier to get your hands on. And it was a real opportunity to make a lot more money for people who were in the business. I'm kind of passionate about old perfume texts. I have a huge collection of antique perfume texts. And you can hear the whole thing happen. You can read how the whole thing happened. And originally perfumers were saying, these are fine for industrial use and for laundry soap and things like that, but people will never work with synthetics for their personal scent. And then by the 1920s, 1930s, it was, the message to women, their huge marketing and message to women was, you don't want to smell like a flower, you want to smell like an aldehyde. So it became old-fashioned to smell like a natural substance. So organic perfumery is this clear decision to go back to working without synthetics, and to work primarily with, well, to work only with plants.
I love that. And it's true. It's always fascinating when you look and really see how well marketing can change people's minds.
Exactly. Marketing works. And I mean, it was totally not even considered that no one had tested those chemicals to see if they were safe.
Right.
And even to this day, they're not disclosed. They're completely confidential. It's proprietary information. Lots of them we know aren't safe. The majority of them we know aren't safe, but it's not disclosed. So it's crazy how we race forward with these things, and then we realize maybe that wasn't such a good idea.
Right. And like you said,
go back.
No, we can't. And I always see that as there's so many things now that have that perfumery smell to it. And it honestly, it's disturbing. And I mean, and the studies have shown very clearly how dangerous it is for humans, endocrine disruptors leading to infertility, amongst so many other health benefits that come out of it. Exactly.
So many are carcinogenic.
Absolutely. And yet, you mentioned the laundry soap earlier. Like, I find that is one that I can never wrap my head around. Like, I often buy a lot of secondhand used clothing. I love going to thrift stores. I love buying secondhand. To me, I much rather repurpose an old shirt, jeans, whatever, than buy something new. But sometimes, like, I'll have to wash clothes 3, 4, 5 times, soaking it in vinegar and baking soda and all kinds, just to get out the stench of those scented beads. And I don't know what else people sometimes use on their clothes, where I'm like, how can this not give someone an instant headache wearing it? Like, I would just pick it up and instantly I would start to get a headache.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's actually my daughter Tatiana's pet peeve, and not so much, I mean, for herself as well, probably, but for her son, for kids, for little kids, because many of us now will buy secondhand clothes for kids. I mean, it's crazy not to in many ways. And like you're so careful with them, and you protect them against so many things, and yet right there in the laundry detergent, and no one does it intentionally, but it just happens. It's I often think of how it's a baby at her mother's breastfeeding, grew up with that smell, and that baby then uses perfume and continues and then she has a child, and that child is breastfed with that chemical, and we're so concerned with putting a bottle in a microwave to heat it up because of the implications of what that might do to the formula and what your baby's going to be eating. But there's this toxic aroma surrounding them. They're little air passages. It just, it's just so sad that women don't know often.
Exactly. And it's not just like from cleaning products, like to your dish soap, hand soap. Like, honestly, it's in almost anything that you buy for cleaning. It's always, and the worst thing I saw was I was looking for garbage bags a couple of months ago, and they were on sale. So all the ones I wanted were sold out. Unfortunately, it was a great deal. And really all the ones that were left were these scented garbage bags. And I could not believe, and there was a box actually open. And so I took one out, and I almost gagged right there in the store. It was such a strong aroma of fakeness. Like, you can smell the plastic fake aroma of it, and not the plastic from the garbage bag itself, but like, this was just the fakeness of the scent.
Absolutely.
It's crazy what they're trying to inject all this perfume aromas into to try and mask other aromas. And that people also associate clean with a scent.
Yeah, it absolutely. Like I get people coming for like I do custom perfumes, and I'll get people coming in for a consult, and I'll ask them, what do you like the smell of? What do you want? Especially if it's an environmental fragrance, they'll often say, I like that nice, clean, fresh smell of laundry soap. And it's tough to in a very few words go through why they shouldn't like that smell.
Right. And clean doesn't need to have a smell. I always say, if it's something, people are, because I know a lot of people who are going back to detergent looking to swap out mainstream detergents with natural ones, dryer sheets, and they're always like,
Mhm.
well, what can I add to have my clothes smell nice? Why does your clothes need to smell at all? Like if it
Yeah.
doesn't smell dirty, like it doesn't need to have a scent. Like we ditched all that when the kids were tiny, because that's when I got into looking at it all. And I was like,
Yeah.
it doesn't need to smell. Clean doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily
Yeah.
mean smell.
Yeah. And the
So
unfortunate thing is that a lot of unscented products have chemicals in them to suppress odor, the odor
absolutely.
of the ingredients that make them up. So yeah, it's a tricky thing. It's
Absolutely.
true. We just need to embrace our sense of smell, our sense of natural aromas, the aromas of our foods and our
Yes.
homes and our babies. I mean, they have their own aroma that's beautiful.
Yes. And I say that I work a lot with pregnancy and young parents. And a lot of them are always like, like, what can I diffuse or what can I wear? And especially the hormonal postpartum stage often does have people with stronger odor, body odor. But I always
Yeah.
say, like, there's a reason for that too. Baby's looking for you. Baby knows your scent.
Yeah.
And they want to mask that. And I'm like, embrace it, man. Just
Yeah.
embrace your natural scent, because
Yeah.
this is how you and baby can bond, is
Yeah.
baby's looking for
Absolutely.
your natural scent. And you love, like, I have never met a parent so far who has never loved the natural scent of a baby. Like
Yeah.
everyone just loves to bow down and take a big sniff of their
Yeah.
head.
Yeah.
And it's just, we need to remind ourselves of that's okay. And it's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So when looking at natural organic perfumery, then
Mhm.
what would you recommend people who want to get into it more? So they want to ditch the perfume that they buy at big brand stores, let's say, because we are knowing that those are full of carcinogenics and endocrine disruptors and
Mhm.
all kinds of toxins. So people who want to maybe develop their own perfume, I know some people call it pure fume to add a little fun
Mhm.
to the name.
Mhm.
What kind of tips would you recommend?
Well, there's so many tips. I mean, I teach this constantly. I offer quite a few workshops and programs, and I do a mentorship with people who stay with me for longer periods of time, just because there is so much to learn. At the same time, that's the beautiful thing about it. Uh, Perfumery and studying aromatherapy for natural substances for the purpose of scent and perfumery is one of the most intelligent things that you can do for yourself. So the way to do it is, as we've just been discussing, to start to think about smell. That's really the way into it. The way into it is to start to be aware of aroma and the aroma of everything. Like smell your produce before you put it in the cart. Smell the foods before you cook them, as you're cooking them, and use that as a signal. Use it as something that educates you. So that's really the beginning. It isn't like there's, really, it's like anything in life. If we love it, we move towards it. So the initial step is really developing that love. It's like any other art. If you love color and you love visual beauty, you'll be engaged in the subject, and maybe you'll move more towards it as a photographer, as an artist. Most of the people, or a lot of the people who are listening to your podcast, work with essential oils. And I mean, if you're working with essential oils, to not really move into them from the point of view of working with their aromas primarily, to me, it's a wasted opportunity.
No, that's so well said.
But the beginning is that. The beginning is to start to smell. And as you're working with essential oils, to observe the aromas of the essential oils. Jennifer, I think it's Jennifer Peace Rhyme. She's written a book, and she talks about, I think she named it Listen to Smell. She's written a number of books, but listening to smell or listening to aroma. But that's really what it is. It's almost like you enter into this world where you're absorbing information, and the information that you absorb is coming to you through your sense of smell, and it expands everything in your mind. It's an incredibly expansive. I mean, it's not only something that you can develop as an art and as a skill, it's also something that will inform your whole life. It's something that will enter into you, it becomes part of your beings, part of your inner life, really. It's fragrant and beautiful and informed. So it's more than just perfumery. It's a meditation. It's an opportunity to really be more present in your life. So I say to begin there, to begin really paying attention to natural scents. Don't smell everyone's product and think, oh, this is good, this is bad, and try and make a decision. That's really confusing for us. Our olfactory perception, it's done in an older part of the brain. So perfumery, for example, it can't be taught in university. You can get a chemistry degree and you can go to work as an apprentice perfumer, but you can't be taught perfumery. You really have to learn it. So when we try to analyze perfume before we've really become informed about scent, it's not very, it's not a very effective way of beginning. The best way to begin is with the natural sense of the natural world. And
to play with it.
And
to play with it.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is where, the art comes in. There's definitely a science behind it, but there's such an art when it comes.
Yeah, and I can give a lot of tips on that are very practical. I mean, part of our inhibition, I think, to work with perfumery, the most beautiful oils are expensive. There's no two ways about it. And yes, on the one hand, to limit yourself from experiencing those oils is really letting yourself down. On the other hand, you want to be able to experience and work with those oils without spending a fortune. So a really good tip is always dilute your atelier. Like you'll see behind me, this is part of my atelier. It goes on a little bit further. All of the oils, they're arranged according to notes. Actually, it kind of follows a musical scale. But all of the oils are diluted, and they're diluted in alcohol. I kind of encourage diluting alcohol. Not only is it much, much easier to clean up, it lifts the scent up to your palate really quite quickly. And it extends it. It stores really well in alcohol. So all of your oils, my first most practical tip would be, before you start playing around, if you're playing around with rose that costs, I don't remember how much a drop, but it's a lot. Yeah, so dilute it and just be aware of that you are diluting to the same percentage, so that if you do develop a really beautiful perfume, you can go back and create the exact same thing.
Yeah. So now when you dilute in alcohol, because we often, in a lot of past episodes, we often talk about diluting in lipid oils, carrier oils. So when you dilute in alcohol, how do you dilute it in the alcohol?
Basically the same way that you would do it in a carrier oil. I half the time make my scents in a carrier oil. I wouldn't, I would only work with moringa or jojoba. I would never work with another oil. It could go rancid or change the aroma. I'm not a fan of fractionated coconut. I know a lot of people are, but I'm not. It does have its own after scent that I don't find appealing. But you dilute in the same way if you're working in alcohol. The advantage to working in alcohol is that alcohol lifts the scent. So if you're trying to create something, you're going to smell it much more easily if you dilute in alcohol. And the other advantage, as I said, is that it's way easier to clean, to clean it out of your pipettes and anything that you put it in, so that you don't have to waste everything that you work with. But the advantage to working to blending actually in oils. So alcohol, there's lots of advantages to a spritzer, a spray cologne that's diluted in alcohol. The advantages to making your final blend in oil is that oil will kind of last longer. It stays on the skin longer, and it also responds much more effectively to your temperature. So, as you kind of become a diffuser as you heat up, this aroma comes off of you. That's quite lovely.
I like that. And now, would you recommend more of like when you are using an oil, in like a roller bottle, liquid form, solid forms? I know some people prefer a solid perfume. Do you find that there's a difference between any of that?
Not really. I mean, they're all kind of the same. The wax in a solid perfume, sometimes it can be tricky to find the right percentages. But they all are different, and they're all the same. So it's more a matter of, I love creating colognes. I love working with colognes and creating colognes that are just a nice light aroma, and with a combination of floral waters, alcohol, and essential oil. I also love, though, enfleurage, where you're actually getting your aromas through the process of using waxes and waxy substances to extract the process from the materials that you're working with. And I love wearing a wax or wearing an oil just for that heating up kind of process.
Absolutely. That's great. And you made a really great comment earlier about making sure when you are diluting it into a carrot oil, you're not using a carrot oil that is going to have a very short shelf life, because the last thing you want is to have the oil go rancid, and then you're applying that being like, oh, I'm going to smell so great, I'm going out for a night, and then you apply it and then you just smell this rancid oil, that kind, and it's hard to wash off also when you have rancid oil. I've eaten rancid oil before or used it, and I'm like, oh nope, yep, that's gone bad. So you do want to make sure you are being cautious with what base oil you are using. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're giving perfumery as a gift, or if you're doing it commercially, creating scents commercially, the last thing that you want is for your customer to open the bottle and think, this smells awful.
Right? Yeah. And that's why it's good to have, the date that you created the blend, so that you have that, and also the expiry date of the oils that you use.
Absolutely, because some of the essential oils as well will not do well in any carrier over time. Neroli, for example, it has a short shelf life, even once it's in the carrier. It's longer when it's in alcohol for sure, but it still has a short shelf life. So giving thought to your bases is, and then the other thing that comes into that is, people are always concerned about a really nice viscosity and a nice blend, how the blend goes together. And that's another consideration, because many of the more precious oils, you might get them in a form that's been extracted with alcohol. So there might already be some alcohol. So oil and alcohol, same kind of principle. It can be hard to put it into an oil.
Yeah, no, great points. And now, I know you mentioned notes earlier when you said that you have your oils behind you all laid out by notes. So do you recommend that when someone's trying to make their own perfume, use every note? Or actually, before we get into that, maybe can you explain maybe to our listeners who don't know what the notes are, a little bit of what that means when we're talking about notes and essential oils and perfume?
Yeah, so perfumery, it's generally you work with perfumery through some sort of pyramid. That's how I teach it. You work with a fragrance pyramid to put together your essential oil blend, and generally we divide it into three different kind of notes. There's the top note, the heart note, and the base note, and each of those can be made up of. I had a group in the other day, and they were using like 20 or 30 essential oils in each note. So it can be made up of a huge number of things. You can make a simple perfume with just one essential oil for the top, one essential oil for the heart, one essential oil for the base. So the expansiveness of each layer of the perfume is really, really variable. But that's basically how it works. And how that works is evaporation rate.
Yep.
So what evaporates the most quickly is going to be the top note. What sort of stays in the middle, bridges the heart, and the base is the heart note. And generally, that's also what the perfume really is meant to express. So it's often your more precious in the heart. And then the base note is what holds it all together. So a good base note will absorb the top and the heart and fix them together. And creating a good base note is a huge part of the trick of good perfumery, because you want that note to hold it all in and make it last for a long time. So, for example, a citrus will last on the skin, not even an hour. Like it lasts a very short period of time. Whereas sandalwood, you can still smell it on your skin the next day easily, Okay. So you try and make one note. You try and combine them so that they become one thing.
No, very well said. And it is, right? I love the top note for when you very first put it on, getting that quick burst of aroma, but you really want that lingering effect. That's what you're looking for. You shouldn't be applying it every hour, or every, 90 or 2 hours.
At the same time, I think with natural aroma, it's just like when you're speaking about not being able to wash out laundry detergent. Natural aroma is different. And that's part of its beauty. I think that the thing is that people have to embrace that beauty. It's good to have a scent evaporate. It's aloof. It's lovely. It's what we love about it. We chase it. We chase it into our imagination, and we want to recreate it. There's nothing bad about that. It's an absolute positive thing. To always have your smell staying the same and being fixed in one place is a negative thing, actually. But for sure, you want to create a blend. The top should be an invitation, but you should still feel it lingering in the base. So you don't want it to be this invitation and then that's gone. Yeah. And then the heart note and then that's gone. And then sandalwood is on your skin. You want it to mingle and mix and hold the whole thing.
Absolutely. And I find that's also too why the importance of letting your blend sit for a little bit too, and coming back and re-smelling it, because the minute you blend your aroma, it's going to have one scent, but letting it sit for a day or two, and just like cooking, you want everything to marinate and come together. It's the same thing with perfumery, letting it sit.
Yeah, exactly. It reminds me of a room full of people. And when everyone is first together at a dinner party or something like that, in the beginning, it's awkward and all elbows, and everyone, the loud people are louder and the quiet people are shrinking into the background. But after the whole thing, everyone's had a couple of glasses of wine and the whole thing is marinated for a little while, it becomes this beautiful thing. And a scent is exactly the same. When you first put the oils together in a bottle, they can fight. They kind of fight for who's going to be the loudest. But after a while, they just have this lovely symmetry between them.
I love that. That's a great example of how it is, because it's very true. That is amazing. And now when you are making dilution, now there's so much out there when it does come to dilution. And for normal everyday use, we, in past podcasts, we often talk about the importance of less is more, always dilute, dilute, dilute. But I know perfumery can be slightly different. Can you
Perfumery is dramatically different.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, I guess slightly isn't the best word to use.
yeah. Perfumery is dramatically different in terms of safety. So the first thing to think about with perfumery is that a lot of the oils that you're going to be working with, if you really want to have an adventure, if you really want to get into it and experience something through it, a lot of the oils that you're going to be working with are quite different than the oils that you would work with in aromatherapy. And many of them have never been, haven't been well studied in terms of aromatherapy. At the same time, the amount of skin that you're putting your scent on is really, really, really limited. So if you were to use an all-over blend of some of the oils that you would work with in perfumery at the percentage that you would work with them in perfumery, it would be harmful. But that isn't really what happens. So you put it on a very, very small amount of the skin, and there's very little skin absorption, and there's very little oil applied. Yeah. So that influences the huge difference, but there is a dramatic difference. I mean, 10% is not a strong perfume.
So what would you recommend the percent to be in a range for when doing
for what I work with personally? Most of the time 10% is going to be my upper limit. So 10% is going to be a perfume, and 5% is going to be a cologne, so a lighter, something that you would spray. It's combined with floral water. It's much lighter. But it really is dependent on which oils you're working with as well, and the tenacity of the oil. And also the safety of the oil. You definitely keep that in mind. And the other thing, I think the more important thing in relation to perfumery is that you're aware of of an individual's allergic tolerance and allergic reaction. Because that's not something that, you can study it in a broad way in terms of safe usage ranges for the majority of people, but in an individual way, it's really important that people skin test and that they're aware if they're, it's also one of the advantages of working with a larger number of oils. 3 oils for a perfume, you put yourself much more at risk of, just like 3 oils in any blend, you're much more at risk than if there's 5 oils or 10 oils in the blend.
Very good points. And I know, and like you said, the biggest thing is, like, if I'm making a blend for pain management because I've been sitting at my desk all day and my shoulders are getting tight or things like that, it's going on a large enough body space of upper back, neck, shoulders, anything like that, or, lower back, or, you have skin issues and you're applying it all over your arms, your legs, things like that. That's going over large amount of skin surface, which we know is going to absorb it very well. And so you want that low and slow is what we always say. However, with perfume, I always like, when I'm using perfume, I like to put it on pulse points, usually either a little dab on my wrist, a little dab behind my ears, and maybe a small dab over the heart. Those are kind of my top spots on when I apply it. And like a dab is really what I do. If it's in a roller bottle, I kind of do like literally just a little tiny circle, and then I rub my wrists together, because those I can rub together, or just a little dot on my fingers and rub it behind my ears almost. Is that something that you kind of recommend that way also, places to apply it?
I do absolutely. I mean, everyone's different when it comes to perfumery, and everyone's different in their level of, I just can't believe the variation when I have groups in or people in to create their own perfumes. Like the variation in people, it's huge. There's some people who just can be immersed in aroma and just be so happy. And then there's some people who a little bit of aroma really irritates them. And it doesn't matter that it's natural aroma. It's the aroma. You know, a lot of people don't have a strong tolerance for aroma. So I think it's a matter of being sensitive to yourself, sensitive to the people around you. The advantage of organic perfumery over synthetic perfumery is that you don't become numb to it in the same way. Like synthetic perfumery paralyzes the olfactory bulb, so people keep putting more and more and more. They can't smell it anymore, and they'll wear way too much perfume. From the point of view of natural perfume, generally people are aware of how strong or how light they smell. But it is a personal thing, you know.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely great points. Thank you so much. And I feel like there's just so much that we've gone over and so many amazing points. If you could leave our listeners with one last piece of advice or thought to ponder on, what would you recommend to them?
I would recommend that they experience aroma. You know, that I mean, if you ever watch an animal in nature, when they smell, and it doesn't matter whether it's a rabbit or a dog or what kind of an animal, when they smell, they're really alert. Usually, you know, if it's an animal with ears, their ears go up and you can see them taking little sniffs. That's how we should smell too, in little sniffs. That's the best way to smell your essential oils. But it's almost like little tiny sips, but it's informing them. It isn't just like, oh, that's a lovely smell. It's like they're sniffing and they're absorbing information, and that's important to them. And human beings have the same capacity. We have a huge number of cells designated to code aroma, but we just don't use them anymore because we don't need to. You know, there was a time when we did, we don't now. But we can reawaken that. We can reawaken our ability to absorb so much more information from smell and from, you know, working with. Many of you are going to be working with aroma already. You're already aromatherapists. The opportunity there to learn is huge. There's so much that you can learn from what you're doing. So it informs your imagination. It makes you a much more interesting, articulate, sort of engaged individual. It helps you in terms of cooking. It helps you in terms of being sensitive to other people, being aware of them. It like I said, it enters into your inner life and it makes it more fragrant. It really does. It makes it a much more beautiful place to live. So I would say I would leave them with that, but I would also encourage, just for your viewers, like there aren't that many organic perfumers. So the market right now, I think, is really, there are a lot of aromatherapists in the marketplace. And I am always looking for organic perfumers. I have a couple that I follow that are amazing organic perfumers, but there really aren't that many. And as you know, as professionals in an industry, to not explore that avenue, I think is also really kind of a waste when you're already working with it. Why not explore it? Your clients will really be advantaged if you have an idea of how to make something smell beautiful. It's more than half, in my opinion, of the therapeutic value of really what you're doing. And then I'm not giving you 3 points, 2 points, I'm giving you 3. The third point is don't be afraid to experiment with precious oils. And like I say, dilute them, you know, so that you're not having to be so fearful about using one drop, but don't not experience them, because they, you know, they're beautiful, really, really beautiful.
They're precious, but they're worth it when you are making them. They're absolutely beautiful. You're right. Thank you so much for so many amazing tips when coming to organic perfumery. If people wanted to find you and get in touch with you, where could they do that?
We are thearomatherapist.com. So simple. Thearomatherapist.com.
Yeah,
And you'll come to our website, and if you have any questions, I'm very available. You can always ask, just email. And follow us.
Yes. Yeah. And say,
We
I know you're
always
on
put out-
Instagram. I love your Instagram posts and Facebook also. Is there anywhere else that you are for social media wise?
We're not Twitter, so that would be it.
Okay, perfect. And I'll have those links in the show notes also. So if anyone wants to go check them out, they can do that very easily.
And if you visit our site and join our mailing list, then we do have a lot of information that we just send out to members.
Mm-hmm.
We don't flood everyone's inbox, but we do put out. I'm highly engaged in educating and in exciting people about working with essential oils. It's my passion. It's my life's work and my passion. So do join and have a look at some of the things that we send out, and it might be helpful.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. And to all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in to the Essential Oil Scoop with Vetiver Vibes. I'm Nikki here with Bonita, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you for spending your time with us here at Vetiver Vibes. This episode was brought to you by Essentria, a leading online aromatherapy school. Don't forget to check out some of our free resources at www.schoolofessentria.com.
If you love this episode or you got a lot of value out of it, please make sure you share it with someone in your community who you think would enjoy it too. If you haven't already subscribed or reviewed the show yet, you can go on over to your preferred streaming platform and hit subscribe, then leave a review. This is the best way to help support us, and we appreciate it. Email us with a screenshot of your review, and we will send you a free guided meditation as our way to say thank you.
This podcast is for information purposes only. We are certified clinical aromatherapists and holistic health professionals. If you have a medication concern, please refer to your health team. Everyone's health is unique to themselves, so the topics and suggestions stated may or may not apply directly to you.